I wanted to turn the light on and the fans on and the air conditioners on, but that's okay. I went up and grabbed a lightweight sweater thing because it was a little chilly for me. The air's set at 79 and it's 101 outside. I'm in Pennsylvania and it's 101. And so George went out and he cracked open the windows on the Corolla for me, all four of the windows, just to let a little bit of airflow in the car. He went down the subway to pick up lunch for us. They're having a deal. I told you about it in the clip. I don't know where I'll put the clip, but I said about it. And he said his car temp said 101. So I don't know. Put in the comments what your temperatures are like right now. Now we're going to get rain for the next 5 days. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday's going to be clear, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, rain. We have a meeting, a financial meeting, Thursday afternoon at 1, and then I have my doctor appointment Friday morning at 9:30, so I have a list of questions. I want blood work done for a variety of things. I want to get paperwork for a bone density scan. I need a prescription for my generic Pepcid, and I think that's it. And then I want to talk to her about this burning that I have that's gotten much better, but it's still there. So I believe it's a friction burn. Not to be too intimate, but hey, it's me. You know me. Welcome to The Anxious Woman, by the way. My name is Poet. There's the coffee. Look at that. See, you don't have to go out and spend $5 on a coffee. You can do this at home. Look. I want to talk for a couple minutes on this day, June 24th, about grief and loss. And if that's not your bag and you don't want to go down that road and you've heard enough about grief and loss and all that, and you just want to say forget that stuff, you can click off. But I do think it's important. Let me try to touch on a couple things that I'm feeling. It's been a year and 4 months. Let's see, February, March, April, May, June. A year and 4 months since Sky passed away. Now he is a Zen Buddhist, so for him, he went into a rebirth and a new life. So he's somewhere doing something. And I waited 5 days to have his body cremated, because that's what it says in Buddhism, to not cremate the body or do anything with the body for 5 days, to allow all of the spirit and to allow the body to be able to go over into its next form. So he died on a Tuesday night, and he was cremated on a Monday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night is Tuesday night to Wednesday night to Thursday night to Friday night to Saturday night to Sunday night. 5 days. He was cremated on Monday in the morning. So that actually was perfect timing. I have a jar with about this much of his ashes up in my bedroom in the drawer. I honestly don't know what to do with them. I thought about maybe having a piece of jewelry made into some of his ashes, maybe a ring or a set of earrings, or I don't wear necklaces on a regular basis, so maybe more a set of earrings or, like I said, a ring made out of his ashes is something I thought about. And when financially I'm at a place that I can invest in something like that, that might be what I'll do. I have a number of women friends and acquaintances that have lost their loved ones, and some men too. I know Liam, you kind of disappeared on me. I think Liam went by the name something like Man United or something like that. And he disappeared after a comment about my son. And Liam, I hope that you come back and talk with us. But I have a lot of people who've had a loss or are about to have a loss and going through those days and weeks that I know what it felt like when I went through those days and weeks as Sky was getting worse and worse. And I'm trying to think back what all of my emotions were during that time. I remember being very physically tired because I was moving him by myself. And I'm 5'2", 105 pounds right now, but at that time I was 5'2" and 98 pounds. Sky was in this form. He was 5'7", 142 pounds. So it was difficult to move him. So physically, I was achy and burnout. Emotionally, I was worn just from doing it all myself and not knowing where to turn and feeling very, very much like the medical community just continually dropped the ball. I realize now that when someone is dying, unless, especially when you're older, like Sky was 71 years and 5 months, and I think as we get older, and I watch Little Poet, if you haven't watched Little Poet, subscribe to her channel. She's 70, and she just did a video talking about how doctors treat us as we get older. And I think it's like, I feel like the doctors were like, well, his doctor was really kind, but it's just kind of like, okay, you're older, like I don't think the effort was put in that could have been put in. And the hospice team that's affiliated with the hospital, my hospital, was awful. The administration and the rules and the way they made decisions were terrible. The 2 nurses who came in to help with Sky were wonderful, but the company itself was awful. Let me move that, sorry. And so I remember thinking he wasn't going to go. He wasn't going to leave me. He wasn't going to pass. That all this was going to get better. Like one day he was going to wake up and he was going to be his good old wacky, weird, strange self. When the realization came that this was happening, death was happening, I think, and I might have said something different in another video, I'm trying to remember my feelings. I can remember just even taking care of him and having bouts of anger and frustration because I didn't have help, because I wanted him to get better, because I wanted him at some points to try harder. Like, I wanted him to do the impossible. Not that I wanted it for him, but I wanted it more for me, so that I wasn't so afraid, And as it got closer, I feel like I went into some kind of a denial fog, if that makes any sense. And I watched his death process in those 5 days as though I was watching it through a looking glass or through a kaleidoscope or through a window. Not that I was present, even though I was present, and I was holding his hands and I was cleaning them and I was kissing on him and I was hugging on him, but I don't feel like emotionally I was present. Like I had checked out in order to save my brain from what was happening. When he died and when it started to go into his rebirth, I sat with him for about half hour-ish, 25 minutes. It was in the evening and it was getting close to 9 o'clock, and I'm thinking, I don't know how long it'll take the nurse to get here once I call the nurse line, which is what I needed to do first, call the hospice nurse so she could pronounce him. Even though I knew he was dead, I listened to his heart through my Littman stethoscope. I knew he was dead, but I didn't know how long it would take the nurse to arrive. I didn't know how many things she needed to do and what the time frame was with that. And then I knew that the coroner wouldn't come because he was hospice case. And then I didn't know how long it would take the funeral home men to come over, and it was getting later and later. And so anyway, I sat with him for about 20 minutes, and then I called the nurse, and then she came over about 45 minutes later, something like that. And it took her about a half an hour to get done what she needed to get done. And then she called the funeral home, and what she did was she called the coroner, and she gathered up all the meds. And then she called the funeral home, and it took about maybe half hour for the two gentlemen to come over and get Sky's body. And they wrapped him all up and stuff, and they were really respectful and professional and kind. And so that took, some minutes. The nurse and I had dressed Sky, and they wrapped him up and they took him out. And I remember, it was like I was watching something happen to somebody else and not me and Sky. Like in my mind, off and on, it wasn't him and I, it was somebody else. It was a movie. It was, not us. By the time they took his body out, it was midnight, so the neighbors weren't around. Like the neighbors were all sleeping. Like no one was watching. There wasn't, activity outside with the funeral car outside or anything like that. And so I think about all of my lady friends and men friends that have lost their, whether it be partner, husband, boyfriend, a child, a grown child, a parent, a sibling, a pet. If you guys are on TikTok at all and you look up Eddie from Philadelphia, Eddie, Eddie, and Chooch, Chooch. Chooch was Eddie's bully, pit bull, and Chooch died a few weeks ago. And what an amazing bond and what heartbreak that Eddie is going through. He has another dog named Cece, and so I've watched people like Crazy Busy Mama, Lori, who lost Quentin a year ago on April 9th. I've watched Kyle Appleford, who lost Jenny to cancer. There was another woman who died also of cancer. I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now. Her husband has gone on and gone into another relationship. I think about, there was a gentleman, his channel name was Incurable, and he died. And then there was three other ones who died of cancers, men, all men. And then there was a woman who died from an eating disorder that I followed, and a woman who had POTS that I followed that passed away very suddenly. And right now I'm following Tiffany Thinks, and with Tiffany with the cancerous growth right around the carotid. And she has her mom, her sister, her fiance. And I think about all these people and what they're going through, the emotional toll, the physical toll, because when you lose your partner, your husband, your whatever, you're losing all the dreams of what you expected them to be. I know for me it was, we were going to go to Ireland. That was, we were studying Scottish Gaelic. We were going to go to Scotland and Ireland. I wanted to kiss the Blarney Stone. And that was in the plans for some day. We were going to go back to Chattanooga and meet up with his sister at some point. That never happened. go to Texas to see his new grandson baby. That didn't happen. And we plan to maybe buy a little house, or maybe just travel. Like, all those dreams go, all the hopes, the dream, like the things that you count on. And that's when I talked about one of our biggest issues is that, or fallacies or illusions, is that we're predicting and we're assuming that we know what is going to happen. So we plan and we count on these things, and then someone passes, sometimes very quickly. Sometimes there's a diagnosis and 2 months later they're gone. In Sky's case, it was a very long goodbye, almost 4 years. In some cases, if there's someone who emotionally cannot be here presently on Earth, it's a very unexpected, sudden loss for those left behind, with a lot of questions that aren't answered. There are loved ones that have passed away in another state, in another place, away from their loved ones, so that the loved ones weren't there and couldn't be there when their person passed away. And I think that is a haunting factor also. We're left with a lot of questions. If it's someone who takes their life, it's the whys and the what fors. For someone like me, and then for those who couldn't be with their loved ones when they passed, it's a lot of survivor guilt, and I should have been there, or why was he where he was, out of state or whatever. For me, it was why did he get that disease and I didn't? Or why wasn't there more family help, and what could I have done differently, and should I have listened to all his instructions? Should I have gone with my gut as a CNA, with my knowledge and my experience? Would his passing over to the new life been more comfortable if he had, say, oxygen? And then, when I see funerals and I see people passing, I see all this family around people, neighbors coming over, and friends and clergy and families all around, and I had no one. I mean, through this whole thing, my ex-sister-in-law was the only person who showed up with flowers and McDonald's a week or two after Sky passed to sit with me. And people said, let us know if you need anything. Well, most of the time I need something 24/7, and no one can provide that. No one can do anything with the feelings that I feel, or that we all feel when we lose someone. There's no magic words, magic cure, magic hug, magic meal, magic anything. But I did hear someone say, after her husband passed, what people did was they dropped off, instead of just dropping off food, they dropped off gift cards for what they knew were their favorite restaurants or favorite takeout or fast food or whatever, or gift cards, so that she could order what she wanted when she was hungry, if she was hungry, and brought like boxes of tissues and the essentials, so that she didn't have to go out and do shopping, things like that. And I think one of the things I've heard that's most important is for people to say the deceased person's name out loud. Like when you talk about Sky, say Sky. How are you feeling since Sky died? Tell me your favorite memory about Sky. Acknowledge him as a person. And I think that's one of the hardest things for other people to do, they don't want to bring up the loss in a definite way for fear that it's going to upset us more. But nothing is more exciting than to be able to talk about Sky and who he is, and what our lives were like, and how we met, and how long we were together, and where did we live, and what were his quirks and his passions and all that. And I did do a few videos on all that. We all walk this differently. It's kind of like when you put an address in your Google Maps, and it gives you 3 different ways to get somewhere. It gives you the country way and the fastest way and the medium way. Well, this is kind of the same way with grief and loss and how we walk through it. We all have our own walk. I remember reading a book on death and dying, a woman who's a mortician, and she was saying in the book that an older woman came in to pay for her son's cremation, and her son was, I guess, in his 40s. And so the mortician, she said, "I'm just so sorry to hear of your son's passing." And the mother said, "Oh no, don't be sorry. He struggled with addiction his whole life. He overdosed so many times. He was in and out of prison. He was very unhappy. He lived a miserable life. And don't be sad and sorry that he's gone, because his life was not great." And that was kind of like an eye-opener for me to hear someone say that. But for her and for her son, it was truth spoken. So once it's all done and people have gone home, or in my case, no one came, so no one could go home. But then it's, how long do I wear my rings? That seems to be a big thing. Do we move the ring to the other hand? Do we take the ring off? Do we leave the ring on? What about the clothing? What about the books? What about the music? What about all of his or her stuff? How long do we leave the stuff? How long do we not touch the room? How long do we keep up the things? Because we're fearful if we take them down and put everything away that we're going to forget that person. Nah, you're never going to forget that person. It doesn't matter if you pack everything up the next day, you're not going to forget that person. I have everything packed up except the turtles. The turtles are still out. Everything else is in a tote in the basement. I'm just keeping it, and I'll figure out the ashes down the road. There's no hurry. They're not going anywhere. So whatever you're feeling, feel it. I read an article about the dire straits that most women get in financially when their partner or husband dies. Going from 2 incomes to 1, and not having life insurance policy, like Sky did not have life insurance policy. And we were not married when he passed. And he had a very small amount of savings. He had already prepaid his cremation, and so that was $3,000 right there. Gone. Needed to be. So there was a huge financial jolt for me. You guys remember those days. And so now here I'm in this position. I'm just about 66, and George is in his 70th year. And yeah, there's life insurance, and there's the house with a very, very small mortgage. It's a townhouse, so the mortgage is very small. Money was put down on it, and it's a very small mortgage. He wants to make sure that if he passes before me, that I'm okay and that I can stay living in this house. The interesting thing is that with water, sewer, gas, electric, internet, insurance, homeowners insurance, taxes, car payment, gas in the car, food, cell phone bill, I don't know that I could even stay in this house. So the older you get and the more likely you are to marry someone who's been married 2, 3, 4, or 5 times, the financial picture probably has changed over each marriage. If there's children involved, there would be child support up until the age of 18, and then possibly college, paying for college, and then moving from house to house as each marriage dissolves. And how does that look financially? I know Sky didn't have anything when he came from Chattanooga, and then after almost 2 years he got a job and he started to bring in his every 2-week paycheck. I was working 2 jobs, so there's all these things to consider, like, are you going to be okay financially? Do you have a will? Do you have an advance directive? Do you have a power of attorney? Which we have all that in place here now. And we have people that if we both should pass, there's someone and then someone after that someone to handle everything. So that's done, and it's people who are very reliable and trustworthy. But there's so much. There's the sleepless nights. There's the reaching for your partner. There's the children's room that's empty. There's the dog bed where your dog or your cat would lay and isn't there anymore. There's a cat whose adoption fee is sponsored. The cat's name is Bahama, and she's 5 years and 10 months and 2 weeks old at the local rescue league. And she was brought in on the 8th of this month, and she looks a lot like Moonshadow, and she's 12 and a half pounds, and she would do well in a home without other pets, and she's like an older, quiet, basically like I'm just going to lay down and don't bother me kind of cat. But the cost of a cat litter, cat food, shots, a cat carrier, like, pets are expensive, and we have to really decide how we want to spend any extra money that we have, So anyway, 27 minutes. I just think it's important to keep the emotions of grief out there so that what we're feeling, that we can normalize it. And if we're feeling guilty, we're feeling angry, we're feeling hurt, we're feeling frustrated, we're feeling like we're falling apart, like we don't know what we're going to do. If we stay in bed all day for 3 days in a row and we don't eat or don't shower, don't beat yourself up for that. I think that talk about this stuff is really important, and I think that we need to do more talking about things that are really hard to talk about. We as a society hide a lot of things that are really, really important to talk about, like pregnancy when things aren't going great, or death, or infertility, or divorce, estrangement from your family, domestic violence. There's things that are very difficult to talk about, things that happen within your own family. And so those of us grow up into adults and carry all this stuff from childhood. There's a lot to be talked about. And we shouldn't be ashamed of our bodies or what's happened to us, or decisions other people make that affect us. I just think this is all important. So I'm going to go. Anything you want to talk about, throw it in the comments. It's the 24th. I'll be back tomorrow.